Three, two, one, go. I never get tired of seeing that Warner Brothers animation, with the different shade rings, Looney Tune style zooming in. It's always a nice throwback to see that.
Yeah, I think this is the first animated movie we've discussed from memory.
Yeah, it might be, actually. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure it is now.
could be a first as we get the pantheon of the DC universe.
You can't
That's a
really
pretty
go wrong
impressive.
there. That's a pretty full on intro. It reminded me of. Do you remember the Justice League Unlimited intro? There's definitely shades
Yeah,
of that in that intro there.
yeah,
Warner Brothers animation.
yeah. I and the animation on this one is pretty good. I wasn't overly impressed with some of their later ones, although this came out in 2018, and I do like the reference the female cop just had for Intergang. They were a recurring sort of enemy in the Lois and Clark television show.
I do like it when some of those ones. It's like when you see King Tut rock up in a Batman comic after he's just
Yeah,
finished fighting off like the Court of Owls or something. Like, of all the villains to pick, you pick that one that originated from a 60s live action
yeah,
series that's had no comic presence. Well, why not? Right?
yeah,
I always love like law enforcement in Metropolis because I know like a lot of the clicks go to the GCPD and you got things like your Gotham and your Young Gordons and all that kind of stuff that really gets all the clicks. But I love seeing street level law enforcement in Metropolis.
yeah.
Like they really don't dip into it enough, I don't think. Oh well, you've got a Superman flying around. Yeah, look, that's great, but it's not really an excuse for us to have a day off.
Yeah. I love the mindset of these guys. Let's rip off a bank in Metropolis.
And I love that as well. Like, well, all we have to do is find out who Superman is. Do you think he's any less bulletproof when he's at work? But that's one of the things that I've always loved about Superman and his sort of mythology is that there are villains out there that are dumb enough to try that.
Yeah.
Like they'll go and knock over a 7-Eleven, and they've just seen Superman like stop a train wreck.
Yeah. So this movie came out in 2018. There was a loose adaptation of the death of Superman in 2007 called Superman Doomsday. One of the things this adaptation does right is the fact that they split the story up. There's another part to this called Reign of the Supermen, which came out the year after, whereas Superman Doomsday really tried to streamline and shoehorn in the death and resurrection in one film, and there's just too big of a scope to that original story to do it any justice with with one movie. It's so this is my third time watching this, and I like it a little bit better more and more every time because I sometimes forget, yeah, it's just the first part of the original comic book story, just the death of Superman and a little bit of funeral for a friend in the world without Superman
Yeah.
stuff. Because I'm thinking, why are we wasting screen time with this kind of generic fight? They've got a lot of ground to cover, but then I think to myself, it's only part one of a two-parter. His costume here is mainly based on the new 52 version. So out of all of these DC animated universe films, there is a subset of them that take place in the same canon, in the same continuity.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, roughly based on the new 52 versions of the characters.
Which I suppose, if that's what was the gateway entry drug into picking up a comic for the first time, well, that's fair enough. Like
Yeah,
to
from
keep them looking familiar to their comic book at the time looks. Okay, well that's fair enough.
yeah, and I quite like Wonder Woman's new 52 look. She'll appear in a couple more scenes.
I know it's very controversial, the red underwear on the outside. Like, I can honestly take it or leave it. It's never bothered me at all. But I will say, I always thought a red belt was a nice compromise.
Yeah, I'd prefer to have them because it just sort of feels a little bare without it.
Especially
But one
the.
thing,
Yeah, no, go on.
yeah, one thing I didn't like around the time is the shift towards it. Sort of looks like he's wearing body armor when it should be kind of skin tight.
Well, why would Superman need to wear armor? Is the first
Yeah,
question that
that,
pops into my head. The one
yeah,
design change that I've never really been a fan of is the high collar. I know that's
yeah,
what Corin Sweet's rocking in the new movie that's about to be released. But yeah, like the high sort of collar, I've never really, because that's usually been more of a design of a villain.
yeah,
So it's a bit strange seeing the high collar uh, top on around Superman's neck. It's never really flown well with me.
yeah. So we got our introduction to Bibbo. He pulls a lot of the emotional weight in the funeral for a friend part of the story, and we are introduced to the Flash and Cyborg. I don't, so the apocalypse technology, I don't remember was a big part of the comic book story. I guess they're laying some groundwork for the second part of this film.
Yeah, what I think it's like what we're getting a bit of Mongolis sort of creeping in.
Yeah, Darkseid, whoever rules that planet.
One thing that I really like, there's always been one design like aesthetic with Superman, no matter what costume that he's wearing. That's always it's always been that nitpick with me, and I can't stand it when they get it wrong. And I think everyone's like this about some detail on the suit. I always love the fact that the red cape ends when the boots start.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, because originally,
when he has these big capes, man, that go all the way down to the floor, like that's more of a Batman design. It's not really Superman.
yeah, because Batman's cape should drape around him. Superman doesn't need that. And believe it or not, it used to be even shorter. In these really early appearances, it's sort of just past his bum.
Yeah,
But yeah, like having it go right down to his ankles or even like trail behind him it's just impractical for Superman, but it fits Batman though because it's theatrical when it flares out when he runs.
yeah, that's
But
right. Yeah,
it's Superman should always be a little bit smaller
yeah. Well,
as we get his
Batman serves
spaceship.
an actual purpose, and that is that
Yes,
he needs the cape to glide. It makes no sense for
yeah,
Superman to have a massive bed sheet for a cape.
yeah,
And I'm also a big fan of the. I know not everyone's the same, but I'm also a big fan of the smaller emblems
yeah,
on the chest. When it wraps around the whole thing, I think it does look a little bit silly sometimes.
yeah,
And it's nice to see a classic logo on something relatively newish.
yeah,
I've always found it interesting the emblem on the cape, because I know, like I believe when it came to the animated series at the time, they totally got rid of the yellow emblem on the cape, mainly for practical reasons. It would have been just too difficult to animate.
yeah. Okay,
When it comes to when you think about that cape like blowing around, I think the animated series was the first one to have just a completely red cape without that
yeah,
yellow logo on it.
yeah.
I
Okay,
always found it rather interesting that I mean, with a theatrical film, and you got a bit more of a budget to throw at it than what you do on a animated sort of scale. I really still find it amazing that we can actually see movies where the emblem, be it black like the New 52 or have it yellow, they actually go out of their way to animate it in there now in the films, and I've always sort of
yeah,
loved that.
yeah. So we get some foreshadowing. I haven't seen Reign of the Superman adaptation, but I'm guessing this is foreshadowing the Eradicator, this hologram figure with the visor and the black stripes down his uniform. The Eradicator was a pre-established concept before he appears in Reign. I think he was a artificial intelligence program or an artifact of something from Krypton. But and yeah, because I didn't think much of this movie when I first watched it back in 2018, but it has grown on me because some of this stuff I didn't pick up on in the first time. They do go out of their way to lay some groundwork for the next part, and that scene just before with the hologram, I presumably I'm guessing it was seeding the Eradicator's appearance after his death.
And it is nice to actually see Superman do Superman things and not be screaming man drowning in a pit of skulls. Like
Yes.
I love the fact that random
He
people are just waving out to him. I mean, because that's what you would do, right?
it's quite good. Yeah, and in terms of their relationship, he's kind of a douchebag to Lois in this, which kind of turns me off it. It's interesting because in the comic book of this story, there she's aware of his real identity, and I think they're engaged because that's what led to the death of Superman. They famously wanted to depict the wedding, but Lois and Clark, the television show, was in development, and they were told you couldn't. You could do it at the same time, and they weren't ready for the marriage in the TV show until a couple of years down the track. So they had to come up with another alternate story in the interim, which led to the genesis of um, the death of Superman. So in this film, she is dating Clark, but is unaware that he's Superman. Whereas the Superman Doomsday film from 2007, she's actually dating Superman and is unaware that he's Clark, which is kind of an interesting twist on it. I think Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice was probably, in hindsight, the most faithful because in that film, they are living together and she's aware of his identity. So the worst of the movies is actually the most faithful on this particular aspect.
She sounds high maintenance, Clark.
Yeah, but she's only that because he's being a douchebag. If he
I
just
know,
told
like
her,
I know he totally like he's not helping himself out at all
yes,
here, like
they're just trying to
whatsoever.
manufacture some drama. Lois is great in this, but this guy really needs to be sack-whacked.
Yeah, so he's literally just giving her the runaround for no other reason than because why not?
Yeah, yeah.
Which is the surefire way to end up in the doghouse. Last time I checked.
Yeah, it's what there's a great documentary called Requiem and Rebirth where all
Yeah.
the creators in the comic book um sort of reflect and reminisce on the story, and Dan Jurgens has a good point. It just gets to a point where it's just really bad that Clark hasn't told her yet. So that was the impetus to finally reveal his identity.
So it literally took him to meet his maker to get him to open up about that aspect of his life.
Yeah. Although
Because well, the '07 one is even worse for this because he brings her back to the Fortress of Solitude and all of
yes.
that. Oh, my name's Kal-El. No, what's your real name, man? Like, you got to give me
Yeah.
something now.
Yeah. And I think it's somewhat it echoes the New 52 comic. I didn't read Superman regularly, but they he is kind of a bit more abrasive and aloof in the initial run of that comic. So it's somewhat in the ballpark of what they're basing this on.
Yeah, maybe they're just channeling a bit of the Dean Cain version when he just gets up and leaves, and then she's like, "Where are you going, Clark? I have to return some videotapes." And he'll just come
Yeah.
up with the dumbest reasons to run away and leave her alone.
Yes, as John Henry Irons enters the picture.
Yeah, Steel. And
Yeah.
and that was something that I've always loved about that character was, he wears the emblem, but at no point did he ever claim to be Superman during the Reign
Yeah,
arc. He
it's
was the
more
only one
about
to never do that.
yeah, it's more about who embodies the soul of Superman and the
Yeah.
spirit of the character, is how Louise Simonson put it. I think she co-created Steel. Again, yeah, I just love this stuff because upon first viewing, you just kind of think it's a throwaway cameo, but they're actually laying a lot of groundwork for telling a real complete story. I think they, thank God for the decision to split what is a huge story over
Like
two films.
I was gonna mention this when you first brought that up. Like I don't know how long it's been since anyone has seen the omnibus for Reign of the Superman. It's like six
Mm.
times the size of Death.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, there's a lot in there, isn't there?
yeah, it is. Like it's juggling around the four Supermen. It's it's doing Lois investigating all of them. Then you've got it Mongol and the destruction of Coast City. Like that is a lot to
Yeah,
take on board for 90 minutes.
yeah. So they're really laying some solid groundwork here. So Luther begins this story under house arrest. I think this is the aftermath of an earlier film. I th I think it's Justice League versus Teen Titans from 2016. Because like I mentioned earlier, these animated films go through a period where they're all set in the same continuity. So this
Yeah.
is why we pick up where Lucifer is seemingly confined to his headquarters.
See, this is something that always sort of perplexed me. Like you just answered the reason why this happens is because it's in a shared continuity,
Yeah,
which isn't faithful to the comic.
yeah,
But it is in the context of the other movies that it's
that's
sharing
right.
that with. Like it's always bothered me that I mean the easy out for Doomsday is he's just another Lex creation, which is totally not why Doomsday was as popular as he was. Because if Lex could just spew out another Doomsday monster, which he seems to do in just about every time they come back to this story, why didn't he just do it to begin with?
Yeah,
Like, I don't
yeah.
like Doomsday being tied to Lex. It's always bothered me.
It's interesting because Doomsday has had a fair few adaptations now, and I'm always interested to see how they get the story off and running. As Lois, she's struggling a little bit here.
I'm just waiting for her to, like, pull open the side compartment on the desk and there's, like, a flask in there.
So this is Kat, I think, the sort of the gossip columnist
Uh,
for the Daily Planet. She was I think Tracy Scoggins played her in Lois and Clark. It's probably my favorite version of the character.
can I just say, like, I love how they're talking about Clark here, but I just love how much of a knob Clark is from
Yeah,
time to time, and I don't think it's a facade at all. I think that's just genuinely what he's like in his downtime. Like
yeah,
and that's why like when he's Superman, it's all business. Like when he's doing that and he's doing his Boy Scout thing and all of that. But I love how Clark is just totally oblivious to a lot of the social cues around him.
yeah,
And I actually quite like how the Daily Planet, and I believe they've even done this with the Daily Bugle for Spider-Man as well, is that it's not really a newspaper thing anymore. I suppose it had to get with the times, and now it's more like a whole news anchor ACN
yeah.
sort
It's
of
an
thing now.
Yeah, like an all-encompassing media.
Like it's like a cable news thing these days. Um,
Yeah,
Now, like I actually quite like that with both of those.
yeah. I love this whole sequence introducing the Henshaws because it was I can laugh about it now because it really did bowl me for a duck when I was reading the original story. I didn't realize that Henshaw was an established character for a start, but I actually thought the cyborg Superman was the real one. So
Which was the greatest thing
the
about that is that
yeah,
everyone thought that Hank Henshaw, the cyborg Superman, was the real one, but he
yeah,
turned out to be a villain.
yeah, I it completely bowled me for a duck. So these two scenes here that establish him in the story so early on are extremely well done. It does really well
Yeah.
setting up why he would have a grudge and a vendetta against Superman. And it also reinforces Superman can't get to everyone. Like he's Superman, but he can't do everything. So it's kind of a sobering reminder of that as well.
Yeah,
So
well, that
just
is
to your
the thing, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just to your earlier point about how Doomsday enters the picture. Yeah, I think the least creative way is having him be genetically engineered on Earth by Luther. The Interestingly enough, the 2007 adaptation had him buried deep in the ground. Luther's workers unwittingly excavate him in his spaceship, but this one has him arriving in a meteor. So I think it kind of loses something. I've put a pin in that. I just love how Lex just blatantly disregards the house arrest rules with his decoy. Um, anyway, getting back to Doomsday, um, because by having him arrive, it kind of one of the most effective parts of the comic book was the build up in terms of the marketing and just sort of putting in these few panels at the end or in the middle of the book where like you'd see a like an advert, Doomsday is coming with an outline, and another one would show Doomsday for Superman, and there would be these panels of a fist slamming against a wall, and while Superman's off having an adventure and saving the day and everything seems happy, you just know as a reader something very bad is on its way. So by having him arrive like this, you kind of lose a little bit of that power. Whereas having him
mm.
buried deep in the earth and he manages to escape while Superman's off living his life thinking he's got it made, it was really effective how they did it
And
in the comic
that was
books.
something in the actual original comic as well. Is that Superman really did have everything together, like at
Yeah,
that
he was on
point
the
in his
verge
life,
of
you know.
yeah, he's about to marry Lois, and yeah, everything was shaping up for him. And then it would just cut to this fist relentlessly slamming against a wall as Doomsday is fighting out of his prison.
I think it might have been Dan Jurgens that said this. And one of the first panels that you see of Doomsday when he's still in that burial suit, when he's just
Mm,
standing there out in the open and he holds his hand out and a little bird lands on it. And then it
yeah,
immediately crushes the bird. And then it's like, well, that's just set the tone that this thing does not care. Like,
yeah,
whatsoever.
yeah, just a relentless engine of destruction, like the ultimate weapon, just death and devastation on a whole different scale.
Yeah, crazy. You know, it really was something that was really just this bloodthirsty, mindless thing. Like, it was very. I think that was what they were going for, is that they didn't want anything cerebral. I mean, because we've
Yeah,
had Brainiacs, you know, we've had our Lex Luthers and all of that. Let's just have something rock up that defeats Superman, and it does it purely by beating him to death in
yeah,
just the most primitive way. Like, wow.
yeah.
Yeah, Doomsday. Well, and then I mean, and then he really started a trend, didn't he? Um, after he done that.
Yeah, the flow-on effect for this story was huge. I mean, the 1990s were a tumultuous decade in the comic book industry. Uh, Not the least, you had the death of Superman, and the flow-on effect from that was the Nightfall epic over in the Batman titles, which would then go on to DC pressing their luck with Emerald Twilight. They wanted to shake up the Green Lantern title, but that was a bridge too far. You had the birth of Image Comics in the early 90s. Uh, Superman as well later in the decade would go on and have a major change with the electric blue energy powers and costumes. You have the Spider-Man clone saga. So it was, yeah, it just felt like a huge decade for the industry.
Yeah, they absolutely love just flogging their heroes up, don't they? I think you can get away with it, and I think, like as you were just saying, then is proof of this. Like the proof really is in the pudding of it. Like I think you could get away with telling a downer story with Superman and Batman where they don't come out on top. But I don't think it really flies with just about anyone else. You could probably do it with
Yeah.
those two because they've pretty much earned it at that point. Um,
Yeah, and their core concept could weather kind of any storm.
yeah, I
But
don't think the other heroes can do that.
What they did to Hal Jordan was a
Was
crime
that
against
was
humanity.
that parallax thing? And
Yes. Oh, yeah. He slaughtered all the Green Lantern Corps and flipped out and went nuts. And his origin for that was rooted in this, with the destruction of his
Coast City,
beloved Coast
wasn't it?
City.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then he just. But what I don't like about that is that that implies that Hal was mentally unstable before that tragedy happened. If he flipped out just so
Yeah.
just so early. Um,
Yeah.
so
It's all been retconned anyway, so he's back to the Hal we know and love as Wonder Woman enters the picture.
yeah, I actually don't mind Wonder Woman when she adopts the silver. Like, I'm sure the gold is probably the more popular of the two on her outfit, but I actually don't mind her when she's rocking the silver.
Yeah, I quite like her new 52 outfit. And in the new 52, they were dating, they were a couple. I'm not sure for how long, but Superman is with Wonder Woman before he is with Lois in this
I've
continuity,
never,
so it
I've,
is
I've,
somewhat accurate.
I've never gone in for that, like that romance at all.
Yeah.
It's never done anything for me. I'm sure it's flown with some other fans of these two, but these two getting together, I've never liked it whatsoever.
Yeah, it's I guess it takes away from the fact that, they can be very good friends when they work together. It's what I loved about that movie, The Meg, with Jason Statham, because you hardly ever see it. He goes to rescue his ex-wife. So the fact that they were divorced but still remain very good friends, I thought that was a kind of a healthy way to depict like a concept like that. And yeah, it kind of robs Superman and Wonder Woman of just being really good friends and partners at work.
Yeah, and like that's what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? Like nothing annoys me more when they try to add some romantic subtext where it's really not
Yeah,
needed. Like
yeah.
I've never like that's why I've never liked it. Like I mean, it's like you get these idiots giving you advice, and like I wouldn't take relationship advice from anyone who hasn't been married before, on online or anything like that. But it's this whole idea that guys and girls can't be friends. Well, they can, depending if they've got the mental maturity to do it, which not a
Yeah.
lot of them have these days.
Yeah, sad but true. I like it's something I only noticed on a rewatch this afternoon. When Doomsday emerges, just that eerie breathing, it's so unsettling and it's so effective. Like, because he's still in his kind of containment suit, and that's part of the fun of his original design, where little by little it's revealing what's underneath. It's so well done. It's so effective.
Yeah, and one thing that I like about those panels where he's just punching the wall over and over again, what kickstarts the comic off, is that God only knows how long he's been struggling to get out of that
Yeah,
coffin. Like he might have been doing that for
exactly.
like the last decade. Who knows how
Yeah.
long he's been down there trying to get out?
Yeah, exactly right. It's there were so many unanswered questions, and starting him in this suit is just phenomenal character design and character work. I'd rank it up there with the Predator's mask. Like the Predator spends so much of the film camouflage. When you finally see him, he's wearing a mask, just preserving the mystery a little bit longer. And Doomsday, the way he's designed and put in his concept as a character's put together is right up there as well. It's where I think some of his other adaptations in the cartoons and movies failed, because they sort of show him in his final mutated form right off the bat. But this is terrific stuff. This, like, what the heck is he? What is he doing there? What does he want? What does he look like? And all will be revealed as the show goes on.
And that's something that I
It's
really like
really
when
cool.
Superman enters the fray.
Yeah.
There's a really cool moment that I like from the comic books, and that's when Doomsday is leaping towards Metropolis. Superman takes a moment, like he's trying to theorize where this thing came from. He makes a mention maybe Star Labs did something, maybe Cadmus did something, but he has this moment where he X-ray visions Doomsday, and then he's like, well, he doesn't seem to have any like actual abilities. Like he's not flying, he's just leaping. and he knows how
Yeah,
to throw one hell of a punch, but it doesn't look like he's got eye lasers or magical powers or anything like that.
yeah.
What I wouldn't give for Bruce to smile a little more. I actually don't mind the cowl when it hooks up over the chin. I actually quite like that.
Yeah,
I really liked it in Gotham Knight.
yeah. And I think these characters are, I think they mentioned an incident that happened in another animated movie. I think it's called The Throne of Atlantis, Justice League Throne of Atlantis or something
Yeah,
along
okay.
those lines. So,
Look at John Johns. Just listening
yeah.
inherently there.
Yeah. Yeah, Arthur, Victor, Clark, Diana, Bruce. And I think Hawkman's there somewhere as well.
See, and this is something that really annoys me when we get these Justice League like stories and all this kind of stuff where they all get together, but they really nothing's really happening that needs all of these people in the same room.
Yeah.
Like that, like there's a lot of unearned Justice League moments that get published these days.
Yeah. Because they were more like a SWAT team, weren't they? They just kind of assembled when there was a huge threat and then they would disperse again. And now they're, but they always did have a headquarters, like the Hall of Justice and the Watchtower.
Yeah. Yeah, the Flash. Um, like he's always been a sort of an interesting one to me as far as the group goes. He's obviously the one who's probably the most grounded out of the lot of them. I know a lot of people would probably say Batman is. Um, I don't know. The Flash just seems to have a healthy innocence to him that the rest of them don't.
Yeah,
Like
because he
even
is
more
that sort
so
of,
than Clark, you know, like even more so than
yeah.
him.
Yeah, I had knew about the Flash as a boy. I remember the John Wesley Shipp short-lived series from the early 90s, but I really got into the comic around the early 2000s. And I was a big fan of the show with Grant Gustin. When did that premiere? Around 2014 or 15. I loved the first couple of seasons of that because, like you said, it was fun. He seemed like a really fun character. Terrific rogues gallery.
Mm.
All of his villains are, most of his villains are just really top tier. Um, so yeah, I became like a sort of a fan of him sort of later in life.
There's nothing I like better than Pa Kent holding a stubby. Now I know he's not doing it in this scene, but I don't know. I just love the idea of him leaning up against a pitchfork with a beer
Yeah.
because he's just
Yeah,
that bloke, you know. Like he's just that guy.
we get the Kents.
And one thing that I've always loved about the Kents is that there is a significant age gap between them and Clark. Like they were well past the point of ever having kids of their own when they found him, and it's something that I really like when they sort of keep in tune with that.
Yeah, I do too. It's yeah, because I forget what novel it was that kind of like articulates it from Martha's point of view. They were she was unable to have children of her own, so she just wanted nothing more than to grow old with Jonathan, who's just an extremely hard worker on the farm. And yeah, the prayers were answered. The heavens sent her a son. It was really beautiful the way it was written. I forget what novel it was though. I'd have to go back and look it up. Superman has had a few over the years original novels, not sort of directly based on anything. So was Batman, actually, by the way.
Yeah, yeah.
And some of them look really interesting. But again, it's just Clark manufacturing drama
See, like you
when he
know what?
doesn't need to.
You know what? Clark is like me. The last time I was dating someone, and it's I would say to her, "Look, if you just listen to me, I'll explain everything. Go on, explain everything. It's inexplicable."
Yeah, monks, they talk shit and don't back it up.
Yeah, like it's really hard for me to say it, you know. And I love the real like slumped, defeated look that he just had there.
Yeah. Yeah, he's gaslighting her the whole movie.
I wonder if the writers like of this, when they're adapting these stories, if they're intentionally doing it or it's purely by circumstance.
Yeah, you'd have to kind of think it was intentional because yeah, it's something they don't really lean in on because particularly adaptations of this story because yeah, they're engaged, they're happy, they're in love, and it just seems none of them want to go near it and touch it.
Like, and
Heaven forbid.
yeah, yeah. I think I remember a YouTuber saying something about that once, going, "Yeah, Lois, she's stressed out. She can't handle the dangers that her husband is fighting every day. You mean the stuff that he can easily just punch away if it comes looking for him?" I'm like, I think Clark's got it
Mm,
under control.
yeah.
Yeah, that's Pa Kent right there, mate. Yeah, you see, like, and I always like Clark having some downtime. You know,
Yeah.
like there's this constant push that's been happening a lot lately in comics, and it's like Superman, like, can't you do more? Like, what more do you need me to do? You know?
Yeah, it's a yeah, there's a couple of different ways you can sort of analyze it, but it's best probably not to overthink it. Like with our Groundhog's Day discussion a year or two ago, Harold Ramis just couldn't understand the fact that he would have a secret identity. Like anywhere in the world right now, someone needs saving. But I don't think you should be looking at Superman on that level. Like having gone back and read his very earliest appearances, I think that's what turbocharged the narrative. Having us because Lois is there right from the start, and the secret identity's there right from the start. I think that's what set it apart. And yeah, I just find it best as I get older not to overthink it. I like how he hovers above the earth, and with his super hearing, he can hear what the worst emergencies are and respond to them. It's yeah, I find it's easiest just to go with it and not overthink it too much.
One of my favorite beats in that regard is that Superman. I remember reading a comic once where Superman was flying around Metropolis, and then he hears someone has just fallen off a building, and he thinks to himself, unless they scream on the way down, I can't really get to them in time to save them. He does get there in
Yeah,
time to save this one particular person, and it turns out to be Nightwing. That's why they weren't
yeah,
screaming when they fell off a building.
yeah. Like ease up, I'm trying to jump here. Yeah, I remember that comic
uh,
because I love the whole uh dichotomy because meetings with team ups with Superman and Batman are always tense. They got their own way of doing things, but when he teams up with Dick, it's just a love in. It's a bromance.
Yeah, I know.
I really like that.
Superman and Nightwing hanging out with each other. It reminds me of. Do you remember that spin-off with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles where Raphael is living with Casey Jones and they
Yeah.
just start going out beating guys
Yeah.
up in their spare time? It reminds
Yeah.
me of that.
Yeah, it's so true.
Ugh. Oh, here we go. We're trying to get back into the good books now.
It's yeah, now it's like Monty Python and the Holy Night. He's just getting smashed. He just keeps getting up begging for more.
What's that Vic Mackey quote? You know the thing about women, and it really doesn't matter what kind they are. You piss them off. Watch out.
Yeah.
Clark,
I'm
Clark,
channeling a bit of
Clark is
analyze
paying it
that.
fast. Clark is playing it fast and loose here at the moment.
Yeah. Stop whining about this pathetic loser.
Oh, far out. See, but that's the thing that I've always loved about Clark's romances when they have gone into it is that there's always got to be something. And
Yeah.
but it's never oh, if people found out about you, you'd be in danger. It's never that. It's never the way it was with Peter Parker and Mary Jane, for instance. It's never a reason like that. It's either he can't be asked to commit to the relationship or something else is going on. Like it's always something very trivial.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of brings the film down a couple of notches. The this whole subplot really needed to be better conceptualized because I think the film, yeah, like I've revisited it a couple of times now, and it has grown in my eyes. But this here is, yeah, it just seems really undercooked.
See, here's the thing that I've loved, and I was going to mention this earlier when you were talking about, we get random doomsday panels and Superman is living his best life. I always love when comics do that, and it's not like
Yeah,
strictly just a comic thing, but I always love writers who can pull that off, where the audience is aware of something that the main hero isn't. Like we know
yeah,
the doomsday threat is coming. Clark has got no idea that that's about to
yeah,
happen.
and even over the decades, looking back on it, knowing now how it all ended up, it's still incredibly effective. It's so well done, these doomsday scenes in the book and the film. It's yeah, it's just really cements this unstoppable force of nature and yeah, just this wanton destruction. It's just yeah, an incredible character that
And
Dan Jurgens created.
this is what I absolutely love is that this thing, like, it hasn't even spoken a word.
Yeah,
Like
just that
it's
ominous breathing. Yeah,
it's just walking around killing everything in its path.
yeah,
Like no rhyme or reason. It's not after anything in particular. It's just doing it because why not?
yeah. It's yeah, terrific
And I love
stuff.
Batman in broad daylight. More
Yeah, I was
more
about to say
people need
that.
to do that.
Yeah, I love seeing him in broad daylight. Hawkman.
Yep, first in, first out.
Yeah, and I love this shot here. That is terrific. Oh, with just the eye of the mask showing. Yeah.
And it's very like impersonal as well when it just starts pounding on you and you don't know what it looks like.
Yeah. And as the battle goes on and more gets revealed,
Yeah,
I just love it.
I love Hal
Inject
Jordan.
that,
I love
yeah,
Hal Jordan
inject
there.
that shit in my veins.
I love Hal Jordan. I eat pieces of shit like Doomsday for breakfast.
Yeah.
And I've always really loved how Hal has had this sort of really creative way in using the magic of the ring. Like using like man-made tools and all that kind of stuff. Like he used
Yeah.
like a catcher's mitt just before.
Yeah.
I
And
always love
compared
that
to
sort of thing.
yeah, because he often gets criticized for not being imaginative enough compared to Kyle Rayner, who's an artist, so he can imagine these incredible mech designs and creatures to help him, whereas Hal's very practical.
Yeah, just
I
get the right
always
tool
found
for the
that.
job.
Yeah. And yeah, very unsettling. Doomsday's will overpowered the ring. It's why I didn't think much of the fight when I first saw it, because in the comics it's a kind of a low level kind of roster the Justice League uses to tackle Doomsday. But here it's like the true pantheon. But then I thought about it some more, and it's still really well done because Doomsday's got this ability to have the fight on his terms. Like because like you mentioned earlier, because he can't fly, our heroes have a tactical advantage, but like he managed to get Hawkeye on the ground. He got the Green Lantern on the ground. He's with his tremendous strength and ferocity. He's able to just have the fight on his terms with nearly every hero he encounters. And it just makes him so difficult to beat, regardless of who's on the roster.
And this is something that I really like about whenever Batman comes up against a threat like this. I mean, like, look, I love Batman as much
Yeah,
as the next guy, but he is in some serious shit when he
Yeah.
comes across a villain like that. But it's the old, and I've mentioned this in a couple of other discussions. It's not about fighting Doomsday for Batman. It's about surviving Doomsday.
Yeah.
Like it's about running out the clock until everyone
Yeah.
else can get there.
And
Now, it's about
yeah.
keeping the focus off the three that are wounded now.
And using, and they won't beat Doomsday physically. It'll have to be a tactical fight if they're a chance, like using their flight, and not letting him get near you.
And another thing is, and this was something that really pissed me off in Dawn of Justice. Why does Doomsday have heat vision? Um, in
Yeah,
that, he does not need projectiles or like long range combat. He is so above that with just his ferocity. He doesn't need that
yeah.
advantage.
I think, yeah, because he does that in this as well. And I think I've got a theory why when we get to it, sort of based on, Hunter Prey, and when they start to flesh out some of his backstory. It's like, yeah, move your ass, Bruce.
He'll need a change of underwear after that.
Fucking hell.
It reminds me of that highway chase in Bad Boys 2. Oh, that one puckered up my butthole. Oh, far out. Yeah, and I just love the and one thing when it comes to like villains, I always love them when they go for like those color palettes, like your grays and your pinkish reds, like your wine reds and your purples. Like they're not really things that you'd expect to see on major league heroes. You'll often get your
Yeah.
patriotic red, white, and blues, your golds and your silvers, your royal blues. Like that's typically the palette you'd work with a hero, and yellow and all that kind of thing. I love the alien colors that they've used for Doomsday here. Now it is different
Yeah.
from the comic book, but I do like the changes that they have made, like with that purplish skin.
Yeah. Because it's evoking the spirit of the comic. And
Yeah.
that's what I like. I like the subtle differences. It shouldn't be a one-to-one adaptation because that just gets a bit boring. But yeah, I like the little twists they have on the original suit because yeah, like you said, it's not it's referred to as a containment suit, but it's more of it was a burial suit, like you mentioned earlier, that the I think it was Calaton. Doomsday was laying waste to Calaton or Calatonia, and they had this being called the Radiant who defeated him, and because Doomsday's a killer, he was not allowed to be buried on the planet, so they put him in their customary burial suit with the restraints. And I think from memory, that was to stop his spirit from escaping and wreaking havoc in the afterlife. And
I yeah.
they jettisoned him off world, and he just happened to crash land on Earth.
And I always love the theory. I don't know if you've heard it. There's a theory that when Doomsday's coffin smashed into planet Earth, that's the meteor that wiped out the dinosaurs.
Oh, really? Okay.
Have
Yeah,
you
I like that.
have you heard that? Yeah, like that's how long he's been here.
Yeah, Doomsday.
I actually really like that theory. That's my headcanon.
Yeah,
Um,
that's pretty cool.
I love how Clark sat down with Lois to try and patch things up, and they immediately started talking about breaking up. It's sort of the opposite of what I had in mind.
Yeah, I like how we took her to Bibbo's joint.
Yeah, like yeah, we can. Yeah, it's like just do the Shrek at this point. Can't we discuss this over a pint?
Just take her to the double juice.
Yeah, yeah, like or just do the Shaun of the Dead. Do you want to go out tonight? What to the Winchester?
Lois is walking in as a guy gets flung out. Don't come back, Peckerhead.
Yeah, that's what I reckon. Like Clark is just yeah, man. It's yeah, yeah. You know what Clark should have wrote on that note? I would have channeled a bit of Showdown in Little Tokyo. I guess we should have paid the cover. Yeah, and the classic, the shirt rip.
Yeah.
I didn't have enough credit to call.
I will definitely text you.
Yeah, I mean, because that's what you do. You just leave her hanging there. He had to return some videotapes. I love the passage of time that's been going on here as well, because that's something that is true to the comic. Is that it starts early day, and Superman has an interview on some show in front of a live audience to go to,
Mm,
just sort of setting the tone that Superman, while he has got some advantages, um, Bruce has seen better days here at the moment. While Superman does have some advantages, he has been afraid of being killed himself, um,
yeah,
and he has made a mention of that a couple of times. That while it hasn't happened yet, I have fought things that were strong enough to kill me. They just weren't
yeah.
lucky enough to do it.
Yeah, I like your earlier point, the subtle changing in light of the passage of time, because when we last checked in with the Green Lantern and the Flash in that, it was kind of broad daylight, and now it's late afternoon as the sun's setting in the background. So this fight is they've spent hours trying to wear him down.
Yeah, and which is true to the comic, because when they double
Yes.
KO each other, it's nighttime.
Yeah.
When Cadmus and all of that get involved. It is so crazy the amount of chefs that are in the kitchen. At the end of that comic book, like far
Yeah.
out. Um,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
just doing their best. And that's really all they've got there at the moment. And this is something I've always loved about Batman. I always love seeing Batman flogged up when he's next to everyone else.
Yeah.
Even Justice League Unlimited did this quite a lot, where Bruce will be like wrapped up in a cast and a sling, and
Yeah.
he's still in the full Batman ensemble. Yeah,
I
here we go.
always liked this yeah, this sequence here when Wonder Woman takes him on solo. It kind of harkens back to to when Maxima took him on in the book.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
Maxima does kind of hold her own um for a while there, but yeah, just that sheer overwhelming physicality just wears her down.
See, this is where I'll channel a bit of Jensen Ackles from Supernatural when he's talking to Joe, and she's like, "You think women can't get the job done? Listen, lady, this ain't gender studies. Women can get the job done fine. Fucking amateurs can't."
Kids are the best.
you know yeah, I mean, because there's always been that argument, like, could Wonder Woman have taken Doomsday out if she was actually there with Clark in the original book? Well, she wasn't, and Clark ended up dead, but she always seemed to hold out on that belief, if she was there it would have had a different result. And
I'm glad she wasn't, because you do get that really great character moment in Funeral for a Friend where she feels very guilty when she's at the funeral about not being there. So I'm glad we it played out the way it did, because you did get that really cool character moment in the book.
yeah, see, because that's something that's always made me die a little bit inside, right? Like, where, like, that moment, I know everyone talks about it like it's a cool moment, but it's a moment that has just always never sat right with me, and it's when Gal Gadot smirks at Doomsday after Doomsday slogs her. And I'm like, yeah, look, I get Wonder Woman is tough, but tough enough to shrug off a punch from Doomsday. I mean, do you remember that panel when Doomsday flogged, just absolutely slugged Supergirl, and she dematerialized?
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
He didn't miss.
Yeah. And I misremembered. I always thought it was Big Barda that took him on, but it was actually Maxima from memory.
Yeah, it was.
I
Yeah,
misremembered. Yeah.
yeah. All right, so everyone's laid out now. See, but this is what I'm talking about. Like, again, it really is up to the writer. Like, Wonder Woman's no slouch, but in most recent depictions, her physicality can rival Superman's. which
Yeah,
I simply don't believe for a couple of reasons. But the biggest one is if that was the case, then Doomsday wouldn't be standing right now.
you're right. It's up to the writer. Someone asked Kurt Busiek that on the comic book resources message boards. I can't remember who the two characters were, but someone asked him who would win in a fight, Superman or the Hulk, or something like that. And he goes, "I'm guessing it's whatever the writer wants, because you can engineer a way or a scenario where they both can potentially win." It really comes down to the writer and what they think's best for the story. So the laser bolts from the eyes here, I think that's hinting at the fact that he's Kryptonian as well. And I think the new 52 version of Doomsday, don't quote me on this, but I think he's had some more abilities added to him. I think he can adapt and mimic or copy or imprint. I don't know how it works hero's powers onto him, the new 52 version of Doomsday.
Okay.
I did, I've never read it personally, but I do vaguely remember reading or hearing something like that. He's got this ability that wasn't present in the original story, but I also, because it kind of bugged me, but I'm kind of over it now that he's from Krypton as well. But I think that the laser blast, the laser eyes is a little clue there that he's also got Kryptonian heritage in him. So I think that's what
Yeah,
that's about.
yeah. Okay.
But your early point is a valid one. He doesn't need them. He's already that fucking jacked.
I know. I was gonna say, like, I mean, you got to give the heroes some fucking chance.
Yeah,
Like, I mean,
yeah,
like when you start giving Doomsday laser bolts and frost breath, and he's faster
yeah,
than the Flash, like, how the hell is
yeah.
anyone supposed to win? Let alone
That's right.
Superman?
And there's some wank that's later established that he purposefully goes to Metropolis to seek out Superman. He's programmed or designed to kill other Kryptonians. I think it's all waffle. I
Yeah.
just loved him. I just loved him when he was just a random dude buried in the earth, and Superman was just unlucky enough to catch him.
I was thinking about this as well because I've heard that a couple of times as well. He's like an anti-Superman Superman. You gotta be
Yeah,
shitting me. No, I'm not shitting you. Um, I
yeah,
remember hearing that a lot, and I've never liked it. Like, because honestly, Doomsday boots Superman away in the original comic about 4 or 5 times. The only
yeah,
reason I think Doomsday even bothered to see him through and kill him at the end of the day was because Superman wouldn't fuck off. Like, I
yeah.
think that's the only real reason he killed him.
Yeah, I would have been happy with no origin for him. Just this mindless living weapon that there's no rhyme or reason to it. But I am pretty comfortable with the origin they gave him. But because yeah, either way would have been fine with me. I think the more they explain though, the less appeal he has the potential to have.
It's either that or they'll do something dumb. Because, like, I've said this in a couple of our discussions now. Like, if it ain't Dan Jurgens, WB just seem to be incompetent with how they handle Doomsday in a lot of
Yeah,
situations. And I actually really like the Hunter Prey um, comic. And one thing just on this scene right now where he's saving this family, that was
yeah,
something that I really liked from, like, that's straight out of the original comic, is that he has to keep going out of his way to keep saving
yeah,
people. Like the helicopter that Jimmy Olsen is in with Lois, you know, Doomsday
yes,
knocks it out of the sky and he has to keep breaking away from the fight to keep saving people. Like when he has to save that family that's in the house that's on fire.
yes.
Like, well, that's at the risk of Doomsday getting away. So what do I do here?
Yeah, very much so. That's a really good point because yeah, it's Superman constantly going back and saving people is also kind of sapping him of the strength he needs to fight.
Yeah,
And it's one of the reasons why Doomsday keeps overwhelming him.
yeah, because
Because yeah,
Doomsday keeps getting all these breathers all the time.
because he's got that ability to just drag the fight down to his level.
Just every time this thing rocks up.
When Superman uses his flight, he starts to get the advantage, like he's doing now. But with Doomsday's ferocity, he just overwhelms these heroes who come into contact with him. So it's almost like an origin game.
Do
you got an
you
idea of the kind of game you want to play. It's how physical the forwards can be to get that.
do you remember the absolute flogging that he gave Blue Beetle
Yeah,
in the
yeah, Ted
comic?
Cord. Yeah, poor Ted.
Like I think he damn near killed him um, with that, and yeah, that was some really cool stuff. And this is something that always stuck out to me. Like even back when I first read, Death of Superman when I was a kid, I don't ever remember seeing Superman bleeding so profusely in a comic before. Than when he
Yeah,
was fighting with Doomsday. It was very striking to see him
it
bleed
was
so much.
very unsettling as a boy reading it. Yeah, when you see him gasping and spluttering and choking and coughing for air, and yeah, the blood and the costumes all matted up and torn. It was very unsettling as a boy reading it. Because yeah, you never see Superman like that.
Yeah, and really being out of breath. Um, like I don't think that like there'd ever really been a circumstance that didn't involve kryptonite where he was physically becoming exhausted.
Yeah, because a lot of his rogues gallery are not physical threats on this level. Um, like Bizarro and Metallo can match it with him physically, but they're not on the level this guy is. And Luthor and Brainiac, they're more sort of mad scientist kind of villains.
And despite
Megalomaniac.
and despite Clark's best efforts to keep Doomsday from getting into the heart of Metropolis, the fight ends there anyway.
Yeah,
Like the fallout, like the worst case scenario has happened.
yeah.
Yeah, far out. And this is what I'm talking about, like the strength of a Kryptonian is just something else.
Yeah.
Look, it adds character, Clark. And that was always a gut punch, though, wasn't it? In the actual comic, when he, if you remember, towards the end of the fight, where Clark just stomps the bone spike on the knee and completely breaks it off,
Yeah.
and Doomsday just starts screaming. So by the time he found a genuine advantage to use, he was already too flogged up to really make it work.
Yeah, Doomsday right at the very end is finally starting to weaken.
Yeah, but discovering that advantage too late in the fight to make it any real
Yeah.
use was always a
Yeah.
real bit of a sack whack. Like, had Clark had known that earlier, maybe he would have lived.
Yeah.
One thing about that, using the tail end of the helicopter there, I love Clark using his abilities in practical ways like that.
Yeah, that's
Like,
really cool.
I remember like using heat vision to seal up a sinking ship or something like that. Like using them, in very quick thinking ways.
Yeah. This is really cool. This. Oh, bang.
Yeah, just give him what for. The headbutt there, that always reminded me of yeah, and that's always like one of the Superman go-to moves is to you just grab him and fly up and slam back down. But the headbutt there reminded me of when Happy Gilmore just lands one on that alligator. He headbutts an alligator. Like, yeah, far out. I remember there was one cool thing that was in the '07 movie that wasn't. It's not really in this one. Um, when Jimmy Olsen and Lois Lane are doing the coverage of the fight when it's in the heart of Metropolis, I always remember that there was a smash cut because Jonathan is still dead in the '07 movie. Um,
Yeah,
I
okay.
know he's alive in the original comic, but he's not in the '07 movie. It's sort of it's a
Yeah.
bit of a hodgepodge. But there's a smash cut back to Martha watching the live feed from the farm,
Yes, okay.
and hearing Lois talk about it. Like at this point, it's hard to tell which way the title turned. And you get this one freeze frame of Martha just going, yeah, like this isn't like an ordinary fight anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is totally just left field here. What the hell version did this ever happen in?
Yeah, it's getting help from unexpected quarters, Luther stepping in. Can you still hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like Luther in a robot suit. I mean, they just can't help themselves. Yeah, just give him a bit of what for. And I want to point out that this is Doomsday still going on after having that scrap with Superman for so long. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
Doomsday's like not out of breath. I think
Yeah,
that's the
because
real appeal of the character is just that primordial strength that he has.
yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
that's
like
that's the whole point of
he
him.
doesn't need superpowers. Man, he just needs to hit you a couple of times.
Yeah, just that the ultimate sort of physical test.
And it's something that I really liked is that, you know, Clark hasn't really displayed all of his abilities in this fight here. I remember that they did bring in the freeze breath in the '07 movie. He tries to freeze Doomsday to sort of like avoid an altercation full stop.
Yeah,
Um,
okay.
but that doesn't take. I think when we're this deep in the game and circumstances are this dire now, there's no point in even trying to freeze him anymore.
Yeah, just full throttle.
Yeah, just keep giving him some.
Oof.
And that was something in the comic as well, which was a big moment. You know, like when he all but says to Lois when they have their final sort of moment um, together and they have their last kiss before the final fight, you know, the final round thing. He says, like, I've got to be every bit as ferocious as Doomsday is if I'm going to kill him. Like, he stops just short of saying that I have to kill him, you know,
Yeah.
like, before he kills me. Like, I've got to at least make sure that he goes down as well.
Yeah.
I always love their reunion in Hunter Prey when Superman lands and Doomsday just laughs at him and walks away. Like you're nothing to me anymore, mate. I don't sweat you.
Yeah, he's completes his final mutation here with these bone structures.
Well, that's something that Clark mentioned. You know, like those bones are sharp enough that they can cut him.
Yeah.
You know,
It's an observation as well from the book. He's got an external skeletal structure as well as an internal one. It's one of the reasons why he's so tough and impervious to damage.
see, I think it's been just such a long time since WB and DC have really earned to do a Superman's death. You know, like Dawn of Justice, for example, is the epitome of unearned. Like when it comes to trying to do this,
Yeah,
and just about every other time they've taken a crack at it, bar the original, it's never felt earned.
yeah, because they're kind of torn because this was one of the few stories that in the comics world that broke through and got mainstream attention. Like this storyline when it was first published got unprecedented media attention compared to any other kind of story. So it's probably the one most normies are familiar with, which is why they keep trying to shoehorn him into stories he clearly doesn't belong. Or they try and tack on his death at the end of another story they're trying to tell. It's and you're right, it can only really work with a particular set of circumstances that you need to, it's not impossible, but you need to get the sense that he's been Superman for a while. He's comfortable where he's at in life, and he's ready to take the next step with Lois. Um, and all these things are kind of really hard to do in one film. And when you try and tack this a storyline as epic and as huge as this on there, it's why a lot of them have fallen short.
Yeah, 100%.
These the as yeah, the crowd starts to gather round. But I'm amazed as well at just how much staying power it's had. Like years and years later, like many and yeah, this iconic image of the tattered cape blowing in the breeze. Well, this storyline had so many iconic visuals. Like, well, the other couple that come to mind is the bloodstained or the S shield dripping blood, and the other one is Doomsday's fist coming through the S logo. But as well as yeah, that tattered cape just blowing in the wind is just so synonymous. It's one of the most striking comic book images ever produced.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, I think that was on the front of the newsstand edition, Superman number 75. And just what a massive shock it is to people in Metropolis and all around the world.
Because that was something that Pa Kent says in the original book, and it's something that I'd love to see, you know, really make it into a live action. But here's the thing with me: I never want to see the death of Superman in live action ever again. I know we
Yeah.
will, but now is definitely not the time. I don't want to have the conversation until 2040. You know, like at the latest, we got to put it on ice for a bit. But there was a moment with Park Kent where Martha says they're treating it like it's entertainment, but that's our son out there getting killed. To the rest of the world, he's Superman, and they don't mean any ill by it, but they
Yeah.
honestly don't believe that anything bad can truly happen to Superman. You know, and
Yeah.
I think in a lot of ways that's true of the fandom when they make these comments like, "Oh, Superman's too powerful; he can do everything." Like that statement from Park Kent has aged so well since the Death of Superman
Yeah.
book.
The wisdom of Pa Kent.
It's 100%.
Yeah, it's such an astute observation. I never, is that Ace the Bat Hound? I wasn't sure.
I think it was the Great Dane.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, that's such an astute observation. And yeah, the wisdom of Pa Kent.
I love how Lex is like Eric from Billy Madison here.
Yeah.
Like he's like yeah, he has to sit on a donut. I love that. Yeah, he might as well have just said Santa Claus, afraid not. I mean, well, he just yeah, you should see the other guy, right? And I love how they're all there in their opposite, like in their actual
Yeah.
costumes. Like they're just
Wonder Woman can't stand the print.
yeah, she just wants to go over there and job him. Jimmy Olsen must have one hell of a film in that. But the other thing as well is that the characters that are at the funeral service that did know him in real life and knew who he was,
Yeah.
they just know that he is so full of shit with his eulogy at the moment.
Yeah, exactly right.
Like,
Yeah.
but everyone else in Metropolis would totally lap that up because it's Lex. But
Yeah.
absolutely none of these guys are taking him serious whatsoever. I always love the villains in their unwind time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like that. Like it's when they come out in a turtleneck and a glass of wine. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he's on his own clock now.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Poor
With
Bibbo.
with the house arrest. Um, I always love that moment of Bibbo when he saves the drowning puppies because the woman
Yeah,
can't afford to feed them, and most of them die except for the one that he names Crypto.
yeah, and it's good. Another reason why it's challenging to adapt this story is the climax, Superman's death. It's generally conventional wisdom that you wrap the film up after the climax. So the fact that, which for a story like this, some of the more emotional content and the dramatic content is in the chapter in between where they have the funeral and the world and the DC universe react to his absence, and you get these wonderful character moments. So, but yeah, filmmaking 101, they tell us, wrap your story up quickly after the climax. You don't want to have it linger too long. But this is also setting up the seeds for the Reign of Superman sequel.
I always
Um,
love that when it comes to Doomsday's body. Like, that was one of the coolest things I think that ever happened in the sequel was that Cyborg Superman,
yeah.
taking zero chances, was so piss scared that Doomsday would wake up again. He took no chances and hurled him into deep space.
Yeah, it was another reason why I thought he was one of the good guys. Yeah, it clean bowled me for a duck. It was such a shocking moment. It's easy in hindsight to, because I was trawling through Reddit looking for some reactions, and it's easy to sort of, in hindsight and what it did for comics, to poke fun at the original story, but there were some genuinely shocking moments in there, and I never got the impression that it was all a gimmick. It seemed there were a lot of parts that seemed really genuine and heartfelt, but and so many unexpected twists, and it's so good to see the creators really stand up and be proud of it. Like no one predicted, like out of all the things people predicted, no one predicted that four Supermen would be arriving next. And yeah, it's just a massive sort of cliffhanger.
Well, I'm pretty sure this is the Eradicator here. The Eradicator was the one who exhumed Superman's body. I'm fairly certain from the
Yeah.
comic.
Yeah, and they discussed this a little bit on the Requiem and Rebirth documentary. They and so the books went on hiatus for a brief period, and then they had the four Supermen running around, and they hadn't quite ironed out all the particulars, but they wanted Krypton or something Kryptonian to bring him back. Krypton was there at the beginning. It has to be there at the end, which is where the Eradicator and the Fortress of Solitude and some of the technology inside it come into play.
And Jerry
I
O'Connell as
love,
Superman.
yeah, Rebecca Romaine is
Rainn
Lois.
Wilson.
Yeah, Rosario Dawson. This is quite a cast.
Yeah, I
Nathan
know.
Fillion,
Yeah, far out. No, there's
Jason
definitely
O'Mara.
some familiar names in there. Um,
It's
yeah, and one thing that has always, like, I know Clark himself has sort of hijacked this in recent years. Um, but as far as I'm concerned, like, the Eradicator is the last son of Krypton. You know, he's the last
yeah,
sentient being from the planet legit,
yeah, I
you
love
know?
that title as we get a bit of a tease for the four Supermen. But yeah, I love the Eradicator is probably my favorite, and yeah, I love the title, The Last Son of Krypton. It
Yeah,
kind
like,
of stemmed from the because in the early 90s, these sort of violent anti-heroes like the Punisher was popular enough to have four monthly books. And there was a theory that Superman would be more relevant if he went down that path, as we see John Henry Irons in his workshop. Um, so yeah, this was basically Roger Stern's way of, well, here's a Superman who's really tough on criminals and has a harsh sense of justice. Like, aren't you regretting it now?
yeah,
Actually,
like
yeah, the Eradicator is my favorite.
like it was like that. Yeah, like learn all the wrong lessons from it. It was
Yes, exactly.
it reminded me of because I remember that moment where Guy Gardner gets a little bit disgusted from the Eradicator ripping that guy's arms off, who assaulted that
Yeah.
woman. And and then the next thing you see is Guy Gardner smirking sadistically at it, and then he says, "Look, I'm not saying this bloke is the real Superman. I'm just saying he should be." I'm sitting there
I love
thinking,
it.
Guy, what the hell are you talking about? Yeah, the Eradicator. I typically tend to flip flop between them. Like every time I go back and revisit Reign of the Superman and read those books, like my favorite changes all the time. Like like I used to love
Yeah.
Cyborg Superman. Now, like if you would ask me what my favorite was, I'd probably say Steel out of the mix. Like
Yeah.
it's a different answer every time, man, for different reasons.
Yeah. And it's quite amazing how all of them are still there. Like decades later, the cyborg would go on to have a role in the Sinestro Corps, for example. Steel is a mainstay now of the DC universe. So is Superboy, Connor Kent.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, the Eradicator, he pops up from time to time, um, in various sort of incarnations. So yeah, again, the staying power of the story, it's just incredible, the lasting impact that it's had as we get our final cameo. I I love the because yeah, I honestly genuinely thought the Cyborg Superman was a good guy. I forget who it was, but on the Requiem and Rebirth documentary, they go, we were really surprised it was even up for debate. Like he's a giant metal skull. Like, what do
Like
you mean
you
he's a
know,
good guy?
and that's the thing that I sit back and I think about the most. Like, but that's the beauty of like I think you can tell what really is an awesome comic arc is up to its like rereadability. Like when you go back and you reread it after you've seen the ending and the heel turn that he does with Mongol, and not to mention that Cyborg Superman is even the master of Mongol when you get
Yeah,
that
that's right.
reveal. He's the
Yeah.
mastermind behind it, not Mongol. Um, so when you sit back and you watch it, in particular that panel where he's talking to Lois Lane out in the rain, he is so fucking obviously evil. Like,
I know. It was, yeah, looking back, it's like, you idiot, how did I miss it? But yeah, well, it's a testament. It was really great writing. It led me certainly down the garden path. So when he turns on the Eradicator and he's finally, and like you just mentioned, not only is he a villain, he's the primary main antagonist for the end game. It's a real shock.
and the funniest thing about that is that Lois Lane was most convinced that Cyborg Superman was the real one.
Yeah,
Like,
he's
and that's what makes it even more like that was my generation's I'm your father moment.
yeah, and because yeah, he got Doomsday off world. His cybernetic parts correspond to the injuries that Doomsday inflicted on him. But as that guy pointed out,
He's a
he's
metal
he's a,
skull.
he's got a metal. Yeah,
He has a metal skull. What do you mean? He's a good guy.
yeah, yeah. That's what he said. He goes, frankly, we were amazed it was even a discussion or a debate. Like, of course, he's the bad guy.
Yeah, it's a metal skull. But I think without a doubt the coolest reveal of the whole thing is that none of them were the real one.
Yeah,
Um,
that was as well, and yeah, that's a really good chapter with Lois and Perry when they're going through the pros and cons, and she comes to the realization that yeah, none of them are the real one, and it kind of coincided with the creative teams. Okay, we've had our fun, and now it's time to all come back together and focus and bring the real one back
I mean, because like
for
that
the
that
end.
arc ran for a couple of years. That like 3 or 4 years was sank
Well,
into
that's the thing. Yeah, because
Reign of the
it feels
Superman.
like that. It feels like that, doesn't it? But I went and checked the publication dates. It was only a couple of months.
Are
It's
you
because
sure? Oh my god!
yeah, because he was getting 4 books published a month. So that's 4, 8, 12. They do pile up pretty quickly. But it feels like a long time, doesn't it?
No, it really
The
does because like I remember, like being like 4 or 5 years old, and Death of Superman was still a very hot ticket.
Yeah,
in the mid to late '90s. I mean, even so that Warner Brothers were entertaining the idea of adapting it in the Nicky Cage film. Like,
yeah, that's right.
so
Yeah,
it honestly felt like, because we got hung up on that story for so long, like Reign of the Superman felt like it took like 10 years to wrap up.
I know. Yeah, I was really taken aback by just how short it was in real time because, yeah, as a boy, it just seemed to go on forever. Like it just never ended. But yeah, like Doomsday, the 4 or 5 issues with Doomsday are in November 92, and the whole thing's wrapped up by mid 93. It was pretty astonishing in real time how compressed it was. But then, yeah, you realize a book was coming out every week. So that's a,
That's
you know,
four
you would,
issues a month there. You
that's
times that
right.
by
Yeah, much like,
12.
yeah, much like with Spider-Man and Batman, these really popular characters, because like you had Amazing and Web of Spider-Man and Spectacular Spider-Man and all that. It just sort of created the illusion it went on for longer. And because yeah, like you mentioned earlier, the omnibuses are huge.
Yeah,
There's so
the
much.
omnibus for the complete collection of Reign of the Superman, right? Like
Yeah.
that is like, 6 to maybe 10 times the length of the
Yeah.
actual death of Superman.
Yeah.
Like,
So
so like it just, if like that just, just went on and on and on and on and on. I'd like to
yeah.
know, in terms of publication, what was the longest '90s arc to wrap up? Would it be the Nightfall trilogy, Reign of the Superman, or Maximum Bonage?
I'd probably give it to the Clone Saga. That ran, I think, from early to mid 94 to around 96. So yeah, I'd probably give it to that one at a pinch. So,
Yeah, all right.
but yeah, that was the death of Superman.
Well, it's an oldie and a goodie, isn't it? Like you
Yeah.
can. It's a great fit for any occasion. It's still to this day one of the most popular stories, that he's ever been involved in. And as you mentioned earlier, like it broke new ground to people who weren't even comic book fans. Back in the '90s, it had news coverage and everything when they finally committed to playing the death of Superman card, and not much has changed. It's still a very hot topic. Like even after some debacle like Dawn of Justice, there's no doubt in my mind we're going to be seeing it again on the horizon. Um, it's always going to be that go-to for a lot of Superman fans.
Yeah, I agree completely. This was not the first adaptation, and yeah, I suspect you're right. There'll be more on the way in the ensuing years. So yeah, I've had fun discussing it tonight.